All right, so here's my battery relocation kit. I've just finished getting the wires all tightened up and tucked into the battery, and I kept unhooking it when I was doing work because I ended up putting another one of those bus bars. You can see it. Put this bus bar across the top to give me my voltage, and then I got 3 different circuit breakers down there. 200 amp going to the front of the car, another 200 amp going to my subwoofer, and then a 30 amp which is going to where the starter, the turn on for the starter and all. But here's a subwoofer, and the amp's actually mounted behind it over there. So from the outside looking in, it looks like this. And of course, I've got my cover here to put on. It goes on like so. And then I've got these captive fasteners I can put in it, which I think are on my table, but they'll go here and here and keep the lid on. But that's how it is now. If I ever need to cut power to the car, I just reach over here and push this breaker, and it trips the power going to the car. So it's real easy and real convenient instead of having to hook the battery all the time. All right, so this part's pretty much done back here, and now I've got to work on the inside. I've got my speedometer box hooked up there and hooked it up to the OBD port. Unfortunately, Dakota Digital has a thing that ties into the OBD port, but you can't have multiple devices like this. So I've got their signal interpreter, which is for the TAC. I've got their OBD adapter, and I've got their fan controller up there, and all those will piggyback in and work with this one OBD connection. However, the speedometer doesn't have that. It does by itself, but if you want to run all this, you have to straight wire it. So you come off of here, the wires that come out of it, and the wires you have here are red for ignition, black for ground, which I have to hook up. And then you don't use the orange until you're programming it. You tap it to ground with a push button to program it and go through the menu. And then there's 2 wires that go in here, and what they do, there's I believe it's a yellow and a white, if I'm not mistaken. They go into here to the high and low signal of the CAN bus, which is pin 6 and 14. And basically straight wire that in, you give it power here, and then that's going to control that cable, which it'll spin and run my factory speedometer over there. But for now, I started tucking stuff up here on the inside. My kick panel is not going to cover this, but for now I'm trying to figure out how the best way to get this stuff out of the middle of the floor, and then later I'll come back with some trim pieces. On my console, I've got to kind of realign the shifter. I've got it mounted, but it's not quite, it's centered, but it needs to go over to the driver's side a little bit. This is the factory ring for the console out of the 06. I'm going to try to incorporate what I can and see if I can make something that looks neat and more finished, so we can have that shifter in this older setup. And other than that, during the test drive the other day, everything in the engine was perfectly fine. If you notice real close in the video, the car started running a little hot when I pulled up to the stop sign. It's because I forgot to plug in my OBD connection, and that made the fans run. So as soon as I realized I plugged it in, the fan started running, it cooled it right down. I have a 180-degree thermostat in here from Speedlogics, and it keeps the car nice and cool. I've got the fans coming on about 192 degrees, I think, and turning off about 184, 85. And the car runs super cool. This inline adapter I did to put antifreeze into it is also kind of the high spot. I didn't know if it was high enough with the top of the radiator, but apparently this is working out really well. I have a puke tank. The line goes from here over to here. This is just off of Amazon, and this is where I can put my reservoir, for example. It can actually suck water back in when it needs it and spit water out when it gets too hot and needs to expand. But all that worked. It didn't overheat. It ran fine. The fans are working good. The car actually cranks really easy and runs good. And the power steering mods I did with the power steering box, the lines, none of that leaked. The steering felt a lot tighter with that and new suspension pieces I did. And didn't have any fuel leaks out of my new fuel regulator and lines I had to redo. So right now, I'm waiting for some rubber lines to come in. I made these crazy looking adapters here for the heater hose that comes around, and I don't like the way that looks. So I've actually got a U-shaped hose coming that'll take all this conglomeration out of the way and clean that up a little bit. And one thing I need to do, I want to put the hood on, but it's easier to access it with the hood off because I need to get these lines made up from AC compressor. They go from here. The old one was over here on top of the motor, and then the dryer was over here, and it all ran down over here to the condenser. Well, now the air conditioning compressor is on the lower side of the engine on the driver's side, and the fittings that go to the condenser are down here on the driver's side down there. So they're really close to the compressor, but I don't have a dryer in line here, and on the 06, the dryer was way over there. So the lines are gonna be different. I need somebody to make lines from here to the compressor, from the compressor to the dryer, from there into the firewall. So somehow lines have to run around this way, or maybe go the long way around like this. But either way, I think it'd be easier to make the lines with the hood off, and I can get that hooked up. That'll be the last thing under the hood to fix for the air conditioner. It's December now, so nobody cares about air conditioning right now, but come summertime, I'll definitely want it since the car had it originally. And everything on the hood will be done. I still have to get it up on the lift and fix the tone ring and the sensors. I think it's just my tone ring needs to be modified a little bit more, and hopefully I can get this thing to shift properly, and then I can start putting some miles on it. All right, so it is December 14th, about 7 o'clock at night. I've been working on hiding all the wires and computers and everything for this car. I want to take a break from the transmission part of it because that's the last piece to fix, which is probably going to be involved. But I got everything else out here tidied up. I need some loom to cover my wires, but I wired up my washer, windshield washer sprayer here, and sprayed it, and it works now. And I've gone in here and I've actually tucked all this out of the way. So at first glance, everything's out of the way. Now what I've got, when you start looking way down here, this is the speedometer box. That's the cable that goes back to the speedometer. The fuse block I put here, and pretty much everything else is behind this kick panel. So when you look at it this way, you can see the kick panel's pushed out. There's so much stuff behind it, there's not a lot of room in there. But if I didn't tell you, and you just came over here to get in the car, it kind of blends in, like you really don't see it. I still have to get my console centered and mounted like I want it, and my shifter, and then I got to trim that top plate out and do some modifications to make that look nice. I need some loom to go here into the dash where the wire runs all around, but once I loom it, that's going to be nice. This orange wire hanging out here is for a reason. This is part of the setup for this speedometer box. I've got to take this and ground it to get into the main setup menu, which I haven't done yet. But everything else is pretty much done. I've got it vacuumed out. I've got the wiring hidden, the computer's hidden in this thing. So once I get the tone ring figured out, this thing should be able to go for a drive. And because I don't like the way I had to rearrange all these heater hoses here, I have a nice U-shaped hose coming this week, and I've got a shorter hose that goes from here down. That hose actually came in, but this one has not yet. So just little details I want to fix to make it look more factory fresh, if you will. But this is one of the hoses. It's a Gates 28460, and this will come down. This is the feed going in. This will come down. I need an adapter that goes from 1/2 inch, which is what this is, to 5/8, and then that'll be done. And it'll just look nicer, you know, a little more uniform. But now I'm getting ready to pull the car around, and I'll put up on the lift, take the drive shaft out, get the tone ring out, so I can start working on that this week. got around to taking the tone ring out of the car. That includes removing the drive shaft from it, which is laying over there, and going in here and taking out the adapter and the tone ring. So over here, you'll see I've been working on it. This is it. Just for a recap, these were the inner groove of that outer sprocket. So basically I cut away all the metal from the outer teeth, and these inner teeth are the exact same diameter because they didn't change. That was the inner ring. And I cut down and made notches in here to make it look like a sprocket again. And of course it's real thin in some areas, but it shouldn't be a problem. This whole thing bolts down, so it should be fun. But now I've been sanding on it, trying to get it smooth, so hopefully all of these are pretty close width-wise, but the diameter is identical. It's just the width a little off between it. So now I'm getting ready to put this back on, hook everything up, get my sensors to be the right depth. The center of the sensor's got a little hole in it, or a little round part on it. That needs to be centered over this ring. When you line the sensors up, it needs to like point right in there. And the gap needs to be between 30 and 50 thousandths. So it's real small, like think of a spark plug gap is the gap between here. So I've got to get that put back in there and set up. That's the trickiest part of doing this, and hopefully that's going to solve my shifting issues. All right, round two. I've been adjusting, putting stuff in, trying to get the speed sensor to work. It's not reading right now, but that doesn't mean it won't. Hey look, the speedometer's working. Shifted too. I'm getting there. We're making progress. Man, you don't know how happy that makes me. I've been expecting it to fail. Hey, it shifted to second. Shifted to third. Alright, that says 45. 48, and it looks like 47. 48, 49. Damn, the speedometer's really close. That's 50 on my speedometer. 49, 50, and it's dead on. So that is awesome. Woo-wee! That makes me so happy. Man, to have this thing actually working now, man, the steering's super responsive now with that all new steering components on it. This is great. Everything's working. The tag's working, the speedometer's working, fuel gauge is working, temperature's nice and cool, oil pressure's good, that volt gauge working great. It's actually shifting the way it's supposed to. Man. But it feels like it may be going to drive and then not shifting anymore. Now it just shifted. Wonder what the deal is. So right there, it feels like it's got a rev limiter about 3,400, 3,500. Feels like it's hitting a rev limiter. I don't know why it's doing that. But I wonder if my sensors are just not quite perfect yet, because we got a reading for the speedometer and it is trying to shift between, at least it's coming out of first gear now, but it seems to be going to drive and not shifting any further down, which is kind of odd. Guess I'll get back and check my fluid levels again and then put it on the lift and check the sensors. So we're getting there, we're chipping away at it. Out of the way, man. Alright, we're in second gear for sure. That's drive. Yep, it's not coming, it's not shifting out of drive anymore, where it did when we first left the house. Push the accelerator, feels like it's got a bog in it. Anything over quarter throttle feels like it's got a